皆さん、こんにちは。The grammar structure we're looking at today is how to use to you to report what someone has said or support what someone is saying. If you want to read the actual textbook explanation, it is on コースブック117ページから119ページまでです。However, let's get started with the short version of it. Now, please make sure you take notes in your exercise book as you watch this presentation. はい。じゃあ、いきます。Now, there are two ways of quoting what someone has said. One is using the direct speech approach, and the other one is the indirect speech approach. Now, the textbook is going to concentrate on the indirect speech approach because that is the more conventional way of quoting what someone said. However, let's look at the direct speech or direct quote approach because it is the easiest way of doing it. So if you get stuck and you can't be bothered conjugating words, then this is the way to go. So if you want to quote what someone has said directly, you have to write the statement as you heard it, exactly in the way you heard it. So it can end with masen, mashita, deshita, or it can end with ta or katta. Okay, it doesn't matter what it is, but you are recording exactly what they said. The important thing is when you use this approach, you have to use the proper quotation marker. Now, instead of having the inverted commas in English, in Japanese we have kakikakko. Now, kakikakko is literally square brackets, but you will notice that the way it is written horizontally, it is a square bracket at the top left, and then at the end of the quotation, you put the square bracket at the bottom right. Now, once you have put the direct quote in a kakikakko, in a square bracket, you still need to you still have to close it with a to marker. Now, the to marker is a very important particle in this case. Now, the to marker is a quotation marker. Now, whether you're quoting directly or indirectly what someone has said, you have to absolutely include this marker, okay, at the end of the quotation. So the statement in brackets, と言いました。言いました said. So let's look at the example below. The first example. 田中さんはおはようと言いました。It means Tanaka or Mr. Tanaka, Miss Tanaka. Tanaka said おはよう, good morning. Okay, good morning in quotation marks. Now, how about example number 2? 先生はよくできましたねと言いました。What did the sensei say? The sensei said, that was well done, wasn't it? Okay, so this is the very easy way of quoting someone because all you have to do is write down exactly what they said, okay, in quotation marks. However, let's look at the more conventional way of doing a quote, which is the indirect speech or indirect quote. Now, whatever information they were saying, okay, you have to put that information in the plain form before you can end with と言いました. You will notice that this time we are not using any quotation or brackets, shall we say, kakikakko. So the same example number 1. 田中さんは英語が好きだと言いました. Now, to identify what Tanaka-san has said, you have to look for the quotation marker, which is と, and then work backwards to find out what where the quotation is. So therefore, Tanaka-san said he likes English. Now, how about example number 2? 先生はよくできたと言いました. What did the teacher say? Once again, identify the quotation marker and we'll work backwards to find out the exact words. The sensei said よくできた, which is a plain form of よくできました. Well done. Okay, so now we know that even though there are two approaches, one is the indirect quote and one is the direct quote. For the purpose of this unit, we are only going to practice indirect quote, which means you have to conjugate the end of the sentence into plain form all the time. So let's start with practicing what my mother said. Now, keep in mind that when you use the taught you, the iimasu or you verb, when it comes to the third person, if it's a third person saying something or the third person having said something, you have to change it to the following forms. Either in the past tense, iimashita, or in this case, itta. Or you have to change it to the present continuous tense, itteiru or itteimashita, which we will touch on the next slide. So let's have a look. Now the direct quote is, this is what my mom said to me. 来年日本へ行きます. She's going to Japan, or we're going to Japan next year. But to put it into a proper sentence, you have to change that into the plain form and then substitute the space here, okay, the empty quotation space with the indirect quote. 来年日本へ行く. For the whole sentence, 母は来年日本へ行くと言った. My mother said that we or she is going to Japan next year. How about a sentence that ends with an E adjective? あのレストランは美味しくないです. In a plain form is あのレストランは美味しくない. So please substitute that into the sentence. 母はあのレストランは美味しくないと言った. My mom said that restaurant is not yummy. Okay, how about not adjective this time? 料理が苦手です. What is the mom saying? That's right. She's not very good at cooking. Okay. So once again, in the indirect quote version, in the plain form, 母は料理が苦手だと言った. Now, what happens if the sentence ends with a noun? パーティーは9時からです. So the party is from 9 o'clock. Plain form, パーティーは9時からだ. So putting that into mom's quotation, it will be 母はパーティーは9時からだと言った. Okay, so that's talking about what someone has said, okay, in the past tense. But what happens if you just want to quote what someone says all the time? In that case, you have to change the itta or iimashita to itteiru or itteimasu, the present continuous tense. So let's pretend our friend, okay, over here, says all these things. So let's go through a direct quote first. マリコさんは綺麗になれました. Wow, Mariko-san is looking, she has really turned out to be a beautiful girl. How about E adjective? テストが難しかったです. The test was difficult. はい、山田先生はハンサムでした. Oh, Yamada sensei used to be very handsome looking. And the last one, a noun sentence. 昨日はジョン君の誕生日でした. Yesterday was John's birthday. So once again, you want to quote that this is what your friend is saying to you, or what your friend says most of the time. Just change all those direct quotes into the plain form. じゃあ、let's look at it for example. 友達はマリコさんは綺麗になったと言っている. Next, she says the test was difficult. 友達はテストが難しかったと言っている. The third one, she's saying 友達は山田さんはハンサムだったと言っている. And lastly, she's saying that, oh, yesterday was John's birthday. 友達は昨日はジョン君の誕生日だったと言っている. Okay, So now I hope you understand how to use taught you in the past tense or in the present continuous tense to quote what a third person has said. Now, before we move on to some exercises in the workbook, let's further explore how we can use told you, but this time in question forms. Now, when you ask question use told you, there are a few ways that you would see how it is presented. So there's 3 examples pretty much highlight how you would see it in question forms. 1番、先生は何と言いましたか? So what did the teacher say? 2番、これは何と言いますか? What's this thing called? Now, taught you means to say, but sometimes it can also mean to be called. Remember that when you introduce yourself, you can say 私はモネカです or you can say 私はモネカと言います. Okay, that means I am called. Okay. Now, number 3 is very similar to question 2, except it's got an extra layer of complexity. Cat は日本語で何と言いますか? So how do you say cat in Japanese? Okay. Now, you need to understand how toyu is used in questions because it can easily come up in speaking exams and as well as listening tasks. Now, before we really allow you to go to the exercises, let's look at some fun stuff. Now, if you're watching a lot of anime or Japanese drama, you will find that we don't always say to iimasu, to itemasu, or to you. In fact, you hardly ever hear that because that is the formal language that we employ as a Japanese learner. In fact, in casual form, we don't say to you at all. We simply shorten any form of to you into a small tsu and a te. Okay, so it literally just sounds like te. Now, it doesn't matter what to you is in the present tense, past tense, present continuous tense, or whatever. The moment you have to use this grammar structure in the casual form or in colloquial speech, you simply say te, and that is it. Now, I have demonstrated how it's done using these 3 examples. The first one. So what did the teacher say again? Remember in the polite form, it was 先生は何と言いましたか? But this time it is 先生は何て言った? Okay, so the te replaces the to quotation marker. Yeah, number 2 is even more handy. Okay, it's even handier when you travel in Japan. Okay, what's this thing called onigiri? Okay, you're always going to come across new words, and you have to always wonder, oh, what does this mean? What's that? You know, and in casual form, actually in polite form, you will have to say onigiri wa nan desu ka? Okay, onigiri to you no wa nan desu ka? This thing called onigiri, what is it? Okay, but in casual speech, you can simply say onigiri te nani? Onigiri te nani? So small tsu and te is implied that you are creating this word. You're putting this word in quotation marks. So this thing onigiri, okay, in quotation marks, what is it? Okay, now the third example is also a very common sentence construction when you try to quote a third person. My mom said, no, I can't. Okay, we know that to say that you have to 母はダメだと言いました. Okay, my mom said no. However, in casual speech, 母はダメだって. 母はダメだって. So small tsu and the te then implies the to 言いました, except it's being abbreviated. Okay, so this lesson we are going to concentrate our effort on just trying to get our head around the to you construction. では皆さん練習しましょう。ワークブックの128ページから130ページまでタスク10、11、12をしてください。Now for task 10 and 11, I don't mind it if you do every second one of them if you're running out of time. However, task 12 is the most challenging task. However, I do want you to try every single item in task 12. はい。では皆さん、Let's go to your workbook. 頑張ってください。さようなら。